The first time I came across pornography, I was still doing national service. That was, believe it or not, 25 years ago. Okay, some of you were not even born yet. And a group of my fellow soldiers, they were excitedly huddling around a magazine. And I was sitting some distance away from there. I could see roughly what kind of magazine it was, and I was trying to sneak a peek at what they were looking at while trying not to be obvious about it. And then one of those guys turned around to me and said, "Ayo, don't pretend lah. I want to see, just come and see lah. Why pretend?" And I felt so embarrassed. I felt so ashamed because all of them knew that I was a Christian, right? I made it loud and clear from the beginning. And that guy, he had read my mind because I did want to take a closer look. And the only reason I declined was because of the shame. That's why I didn't join in. Now, I thought back about the incident, and I'm just so profoundly thankful that I grew up before the age of the internet. Okay, the internet became widely available only like 4 or 5 years after that. So I feel really very much for the young people growing up today, as well as all those who have to raise children in this age. Because in contrast, today, anyone can access pornography more easily than they can turn on a tap, right? Just a few clicks, a few swipes on your computer, on your tablet, on your phone, and you will have unlimited and largely free pornography in high definition, as much of it, all kinds that you want, all in the privacy of your home or in your own room. The growth of the porn industry has been nothing short of phenomenal. Porn sites, did you know, receive more internet traffic than Twitter, Instagram, Netflix, Pinterest, LinkedIn, all added together. Think about that. It is estimated that the porn industry is worth currently over $100 billion. Staggering. Just one porn website alone called Pornhub. Okay, I never visited it, okay, don't worry. I just read the statistics. In 2019, they reported 42 billion visits to their websites. That's 6 times the number of people in the world. And it might surprise to know you, they reported that about 30% of their visitors were women. In developed countries, up to 76% of men and 41% of women use pornography. Nearly 12% of all internet websites are pornographic, and a full 1/4 of internet searches relate to sex. The proliferation of pornography is a pandemic that is far more dangerous and far more contagious than COVID-19. Though few of us, many of us worry about COVID-19, few of us worry about the porn pandemic. One survey, interestingly, found out that only 25% of parents think that their children are watching porn. And when their children were asked the same question, guess what? 53% of them reported that they were doing so. It would be fair to say that most of us are far more concerned that our children will suffer from COVID-19, although, as I said, the risk is negligible, than what pornography might be doing to them, for which the risk is substantial. Behind this complacency, I think, is the pervasive idea that, porn, it's not a nice thing, but it's not a major issue. It's not a big threat. It's not a big problem. And it's going to get worse. In the West, it is swiftly gaining acceptance. In 2018, Gallup reported that 43% of Americans say that porn is morally acceptable. And that's a 7 percentage point increase over just the previous year. That's really fast. And you can be sure that this will happen in our society as well. Okay? And it will move even more quickly than we expect. I really grappled with this topic. It's very difficult for me as a preacher to talk about this topic. Okay, not because I struggle with pornography, not because it's very awkward to talk about it, but because I realized that most of you would think, yeah, the pastor, of course, you renounce porn. Now, what else can you say? Right? And so whatever I say will be discounted. Okay? This is just the party line. This is what you're supposed to say. So, especially for those of you who are not Christians, can I just explain to you that Christianity says porn is wrong? Okay, and I'm telling you to avoid it, not just because Christianity says it's wrong, but it is, but God's commands are always given for our good. Okay, that's a reason. And he's given for our best interest. And today, I want to explain to you why pornography is so detrimental. And then we will talk a bit about how we can avoid it, even though it's become so enticing and so readily available. And I'm going to look at a passage in the Bible found in Matthew chapter 5, verses 27, 30. Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery,' but I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully in his heart, has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go to hell." Now, I know it's very easy, especially if you're not familiar with the Bible, to read a passage like this and say, there, you see? That's Christianity. Always so negative about sex. Just thinking about sexually about someone of the opposite sex will condemn you to hell already. Okay, that is not the meaning of this passage at all. And I really want to urge you, if you haven't already done so, go through the first 2 sermons that I preached on this topic so that you can appreciate the high view that the Bible holds on sex. Okay, without which a lot of these things will not be will not have the same meaning. Okay, so if not done so, please watch them. Okay? But today, what I want to do is draw 3 lessons from this passage, which 3 points. Okay, the distortion of pornography, deception of pornography, and deliverance from pornography. Okay, so you don't have to guess what the blanks are already. Okay, just fill them out first. Okay, so let's get started. First, the distortion of pornography. I previously explained, okay, to a bit of recap, I previously explained that God gave us sex for 3 reasons. And these are important. You know, I just happened to talk to some young people, and they don't seem very interested in the reason. They say because, we have been trained since 12 years of church education tells us sex must be kept within marriage. That's good enough for us. I think it's good enough for you until, number 1, you're placed in temptation, and number 2, your non-Christian friends start questioning you about it. All right? So it's important to understand the reasons behind it. Okay? First of all, sex, God gives it to us for 2 persons to join in intimate. Okay, I know I use the word complete, but in hindsight, intimate is better. Okay? Intimate oneness with each other, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, in every way, in one flesh union. Okay, in a way that nothing else in life can. Secondly, sex is meant to be a selfless act. We think of getting, but actually God gave it to us as something to give to the other person, selflessly, without reservation. It's an act of radical self-donation. Number 3, sex is meant to be a signpost. Signpost points us to something, right? The more important thing. And sex, the pleasure, the joys of sex are meant to be a signpost that points us to the greater pleasure and intimacy that we would experience, that we were actually made for. But only when Jesus Christ comes back and takes us to be his bride. And then we will experience that, and sex is telling us that, look, there is a much greater joy that is in store for you, but only if you have put your trust in Jesus Christ for forgiveness of sins to make you acceptable to God. Now, I've also explained that within the context of a marriage covenant, sex becomes a wonderful and powerful act of celebration. Every time a couple engages in it, they are renewing and reinforcing their exclusive commitment to each other. It is like getting married all over. It's celebrating the marriage all over again. It's like going back to your wedding day all over again. Conversely, every time sex happens outside of the marriage covenant, no matter how good it feels, no matter what it calls it, it is in truth a selfish and consumeristic act that fakes a whole life union. It says with our bodies that we are totally naked and open to each other, but that's a lie because you're not. You're not being naked and vulnerable to each other the rest of your life. That only happens when you enter into a marriage covenant. Now, bear all that in mind. Okay, and go back to what Jesus said again in verse 28 when he says, "But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." If you understand the purpose of sex, like a marriage, like what I explained, this is not difficult to follow. To fulfill its purpose, sex must have a proper objective. And the proper object is someone you are committed to by a covenant of marriage. And that person is, in other words, your husband or your wife, your spouse. Your spouse is the only rightful object, because sex is meant to join you to that person intimately. That is the one person you give yourself wholly to, and the person gives himself or herself wholly to you. So what's wrong with pornography, first of all, is that it focuses all your sexual energies on the wrong object. Because in pornography, there is no joining together of two persons. Right? There's no sharing of body, mind, and spirit. There is no intimacy. There's only voyeurism. It is utterly devoid of all relationship. And not surprisingly, because of all that, pornography has exactly the opposite effect of what marriage and sex is intended to give us. It actually makes you feel lonelier and emptier. Right? You know, many of you know what I mean. Not only is there no joining together, not only is there no oneness and intimacy, pornography also contradicts the whole purpose of sex as being something that you give to the other person. Because pornography use is totally self-centered. Right? Your object is 100% yourself. The people in those images are merely commodities, objects, things that you use for your own pleasure, and so you reduce a beautiful act of donation into an ugly act of self-gratification. Pornography seriously distorts sex and its intended purpose. And I said last week that everything in life has a purpose, what the ancient Greeks call a telos. And when you violate telos, there will invariably be consequences. And this is true not just of sex outside of marriage, it's true of pornography as well. Jesus taught this powerful principle in Matthew chapter 15, verse 19. "For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, and slander." And the point is this: if we harbor lust in our hearts, it will invariably and inevitably come out in external consequences, negative external consequences in our lives. So if you go online and search for the detrimental effects of pornography, you may well come away with the impression that, hey, this is still an unsettled issue. Okay, still a lot of people really disagree over this. No, it's not clear at all. Don't you believe that? All those websites, all those things are there because, like the tobacco industry, the pornography industry is extremely lucrative, and they have a well-oiled PR machinery to shape and influence public opinion and to lobby lawmakers. Well, don't take my word for it. You know, the Washington Post is one of the most well-known newspapers in America and hardly a conservative newspaper. Yet in 2016, it published an article by Professor Gail Dines, a sociology professor, who wrote these words. She said, "No matter what you think of pornography, whether it's harmful or harmless fantasy, the science is there." The science is there. How much? After 40 years of peer-reviewed research, scholars can say with confidence that porn is an industrial product that shapes how we think about gender, sexuality, relationships, intimacy, sexual violence, and gender equality for the worse. The science is there. The evidence is overwhelming. Porn use increases It has all kinds of effects. It increases the likelihood of teenagers starting to experiment with sex. Men who watch porn are more likely to say that they will commit rape or sexual assault if they can be confident that they wouldn't get caught. They also say they are less likely to intervene if they see sexual assault taking place. And that's not surprising at all, because many studies have shown up to 90% of porn involve physical aggression against women and treat it as no big deal. In fact, they seem to be enjoying it, normalizing violence against women. And it's not just the men. The women suffer from pornography as well, and suffer from men's use of pornography. Women suffer diminished self-esteem, relational quality, and sexual satisfaction in proportion to their male partners' usage of porn. And again, that's not surprising, right? Because they are now all women seem to be under incredible pressure to live up to totally unrealistic expectations in their appearance and in their sexual performance compared to those porn actresses. And it's no wonder that in her conclusion, Professor Dice says this: as the research shows, porn is not merely a moral nuisance and subject for culture war debates, it is a threat to our public health. It's a threat to society. Okay, it's not just harmless fantasy, it now affects everybody in society. And all these negative consequences are simply a natural outworking of how God's beautiful design for sex has been distorted by pornography. Okay, that's the big picture. But let's move on to the second point, which is a lot more personal. The second point is the deception of pornography. When I was a youth, my youth leader, one day he shared this with me, and I remembered this. He said he was very affected because he woke up one night and he saw his brother in the living room, in the dark, watching porn secretly. And as he looked at his brother sitting there in the dark, watching the glowing images on the screen, he felt really frightened. And he said, at the moment, I sensed that pornography is demonic. Now you must remember, these were the days, as I said, before the internet, when the porn was not readily available. For something like that is very rare. When you see somebody doing something like that and he was really frightened by it. I wonder what he would say today. But, I think actually in a very real sense, at the time I was not too impressed by this demonic talk. But now I look back, I realize that in a very real sense, he is right. Because the devil would no doubt want as many people as possible to indulge in porn. Because watching porn is not just breaking God's law. It is not just disobedience. It leads to something far worse. It leads to something that makes the devil a lot happier. He rejoices every time someone uses porn. You know why? When Jesus talks about looking at a woman lustfully, he uses a Greek word that means desiring or coveting. And that's also translated very often in the Bible as greed. Now, I don't know how much you've read about greed or you know about greed, but did you know that in the Bible, greed always gets an elevated warning? Serious alert. Okay, for example, look at this. Colossians 3, verse 5. Put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature, sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry. Greed is idolatry. And just looking at this passage, 2 points to note. Number one, first, coveting or greed is often singled out because it is more sinister than just disobedience or bad behavior. It is idolatry. In idolatry, you not only defy God, you seek to replace Him with something else. Because, and nothing would suit the devil more, of course, because you would then be living under the deception that something else can take God's place in your life. Okay? I don't know. I guess the devil cannot say hallelujah, but whatever appropriate word is for him, he rejoices. Secondly, notice that greed and lust are often placed side by side. Okay? They are BFFs, good friends, put together beside each other. For example, here in Colossians 3:5, as well as in, say, Ephesians 5:5. Okay, don't have it on the screen, but it says, for of this you can be sure, no immoral, impure, or greedy person, such a person is an idolater, will inherit the kingdom of Christ and of God. Greed and lust always placed together. Why? There's a good reason. Because they are the two most seductive idols, the two most attractive false gods in our lives. Like how? Well, for a start, both of them cause us to fantasize. I mean, come on. How many of you have not dreamt about all the things you would buy, all the places you would go to if only you had the money? The house you buy, the car that you drive. Or imagine how people would admire you and look up to you if only you have all that wealth. Or envied somebody who is rich and wondered, how nice you'll be to enjoy being that person or being that person's wife or husband. You know? Why do you think there's a program called Lifestyle of the Rich and Famous? Don't you guys engage in such fantasies? Hands up those who engage in such fantasies. Okay, Benson, you and I are the only people here. All right? Come on, guys, don't bluff. I know all of you do. Just like money, sex makes you fantasize. How many of you fantasize about sex? Okay, again, Benson and I are the only two perverted people down here. Okay. Or more likely, we are the only two honest people down here. Right? Okay, both money and sex have the both money and sex have the power to make you do things you would not otherwise even dream of doing. For the sake of money, you do all kinds of things. You overwork, you neglect your faith, you don't neglect your family, you trample on other people, or you even break the law. Similarly, lust makes us willing to put our safety, our reputation, even our families on the line. Because both false gods demand that we sacrifice valuable things on their altars. But what's most dangerous about both of them is they both tell the same lie. The lie that if only you have enough of it, then you will truly be somebody. You'll be a person of worth. You will finally feel happy with your life. Life will finally be worth living. And when you buy into the lie, and I tell you, almost all of us have bought into those lies, you will rely on them for your identity and your significance. That's idol worship. That's what the devil loves. I know many of you think that all you want, come on, all this is so complicated. All you want from pornography is just some harmless pleasure, release some sexual tension. Let me tell you this, you want much more than that. You want much more than that. I remember overhearing this young man, and this is somebody in church. He was talking about getting his results for an assignment. And he said, wow, I really hope I get a good result. Otherwise, I have to go home and watch some porn. What's that? Escapism. Escapism. Porn is escaping. You are trying to use it to patch up the big hole in your life. What is your way to numb the pain with that momentary pleasure of porn? Not only that, porn gives you that sense of power and control. Nothing else likely ever will. Everyday life, we don't see people, naked bodies all around us, right? But in porn, what you get to see incredibly attractive and beautiful people bare themselves for you, happily, eager to please you. And in real life, these people, even if they are fully clothed, you take a look at them and say, what look at? Huh? Right? But porn gives you that power, that sense of incredible power. In addition, really, porn is a futile search for ultimate satisfaction, ultimate pleasure. And that's why many people masturbate to porn, trying to secure a pleasure that is out of this world. But that phrase says it's out of this world. You're really seeking something that you do need, but that only God can provide, and that He will provide only in the next life. As I said, sex, right? It's a foretaste, a transcendent foretaste. So what's happening? People indulge in porn, not just to release sexual tension, not just for some harmless fun. It is a false god that they look to for significance and satisfaction. And that's why it's so difficult to break free. Thousands of years ago, God gave a command against worshiping images, Exodus chapter 20, verse 4. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven, above, or on earth below, beneath, waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. Back then, of course, images refer to the statues that people make, stone or wood, mirror, and then they bow down to them as gods. That practice has increasingly fallen out of fashion, but a new idol worship is rampant today. We do it with pornographic images. Watching porn has become the most ubiquitous and common act of idol worship. But idolatry is self-deception. I did a whole series on it already, so you guys know this very well by now. Okay, we lie to ourselves that something other than our Creator can give us the meaning and satisfaction and worth that we really need. We tell ourselves, why do we tell ourselves that lie? Because we don't want to bow down to God and let Him take over control of our lives. So we set up idols as substitutes. The irony is that idols would end up controlling our lives. And worse, they would never give us what we really want, and they will enslave us in bondage. When Jesus talks about hell here, He doesn't use the usual word in Greek for hell, which is Hades. He actually uses another word called Gehenna. Gehenna. And Gehenna is a place outside of Jerusalem, a rubbish dump actually, okay, where they take the city's garbage out there and then they burn it. And so the fire there burns continuously, unceasingly. And that is a synonym for hell. Hell is a place where your deepest desires can never be met because they can only be met by God, and God is absent in hell. That's why it's called hell. The dissatisfaction that you experience from worshiping the idol of pornography is a foretaste of hell. Because, after you stop indulging in porn, the hole in your life remains there. Only now it feels more acute. It feels bigger, doesn't it? After the high you experience, you will feel more insignificant and pathetic than before. And worse, now you are trapped by a deep sense of shame as well. That shame makes you feel condemned before God and isolates you from everybody else. So you become more lonely. All idols make you worse off. And that's the deception of pornography. Which brings us to the final point, which is deliverance from pornography. Deliverance from pornography. Why is it so difficult to break free from porn? Because it is about deliverance from the demonic deception of idolatry. Let me just say this straight up. You can't get out of it by sheer willpower, by willing it, by resolving to do more. Yet, it is possible to find freedom. Back to what Jesus said. Okay, Matthew chapter 5, verse 29, if your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out, throw it away. It's better for you to lose one part of body than your whole body will be thrown into hell. If your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of body than for your whole body to go into a hell. Doesn't look like a very practical solution. I mean, should we take this literally? Okay, if you take that literally, very simple actually. Okay, all you really need is a fork. Do the job, gouge it out, throw it away. Okay, that would solve the pornography problem, of course, but it create another problem because many of us will be blind, especially many of the guys here, right? No, Jesus is speaking hyperbolically for emphasis. What is his point? His point is you need to take drastic action because this is far more serious than you think. It is worth going the extra mile. It is worth paying the price to overcome the problem of lust. How do you take drastic action? Let's go to somewhere else in the Bible that gives us advice. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 22. Paul told Timothy, flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. Now, let's just look at the underlined words. 3 things. Number 1, how do you take drastic action? Number 1, flee. Okay, flee. You don't have to flee from COVID anymore. Okay, you guys are vaccinated, you're young. But you do have to flee from porn. Drastic action means safe distancing. Don't say, come lah, they're scared of you. Not like that. we intentionally keep away from it, as far away as possible. You know, while preparing for this series, I had to do quite a bit of internet searches, okay, on sex and porn. And I tell you, my browser keep reporting to me that its country settings did not allow it to report the search results to me. Right? And I had to keep rewording my search entries to convince it of my innocent intention because, you know, the AI is still not smart enough to differentiate between a preacher doing research and someone searching for porn. Right? Actually, I thought, to make my job easier, all I needed to do was to change my country settings or turn off the safe search filter. But I didn't do it. I contemplated and said, no, I'm not going to do it. You know why I didn't do it? You know why I didn't do it? Because I don't trust myself. Okay, honestly, I never had a serious with porn, but I don't want to get started. I don't want to get started. I don't trust myself. When it comes to porn, ladies and gentlemen, don't trust yourself. Tell the person next to you, don't trust yourself. Don't trust yourself, and those of your parents, don't trust your children. Okay, that will be extremely foolish. You know, it's very interesting. In this passage, Paul referred to Timothy as youthful. Youthful. But you need to understand, in their culture, youth means anybody below 40 years old. Okay, most of you are children by the definition. Okay, and Timothy, by this time he wrote, this is Paul's last letter in his lifetime. By the time he wrote this, Timothy had already followed Paul around, sat at his feet, observed him, learned from him firsthand for over a decade. Paul had written in many other places that Timothy was a great leader, a mature believer. In fact, when he wrote this, Timothy had been assigned to pastor the Ephesus church, a church in Ephesus, for 4 years already. Very accomplished Christian leader. And yet Paul, when he wrote this personal letter to Timothy, he told him when it comes to lust, the appropriate response is, flee. Tell the person next to you, flee. All the more for us, guys. Don't click on those links. If necessary, set a filter on your device, on your children's device. That one for sure you must do. Okay, do whatever it takes. Keep away from it. Run for your life. Second word down here is the word pursue. Run after something with all your might. Pursue. After what? Righteousness, faith, love, and peace. That's the positive aspect. Flee means run away from. Pursue means run towards. Right? You not only need to run away from the bad, you need to run towards the good. Because self-control is like a muscle. Suppose the maximum weight you can bench press is 50 kilograms. Hope that's not an insult to you, but okay, just hypothetical. Suppose the maximum weight you can bench press is 50 kilograms. And if I put a 55 kilogram weight on that thing and tell you, do it, will you be able to do it? Answer is no. I can tell you, come on, try harder. It's all in your mind. Just do it. Why so weak? If you really want to do it, you can do it. And you try. I tell you, you can try until you're blue in the face. That thing won't budge. Okay? It makes no difference. Not because you didn't try hard enough, but because you didn't have the muscle capacity for it. It's so simple. But there's something you can do about that. You can do the correct, if you're a trainer, you can do the correct exercises, strengthen your muscles. And gradually, a point in time will come when you will be able to lift 55 kilograms. And it wouldn't be because you tried harder than you used to do before. You have more determination now. It's not. It's simply because now your muscles have grown to have that greater capacity. So some of you here, you can't say no to porn despite your best intentions, not because I just speaking to a young man this week, and he confessed to me he was struggling with his problem, and it made him wonder if he's even saved. Is he really a child? God is a Christian. How is it that if he's a Christian, he feels so bad about this, he confesses sins, he repents, promises God, asks God for help, and then he goes right back to it again with a vengeance. So, no, guys. It's not that you are not saved. You simply don't have the capacity now But you can build it up. If you focus on growing spiritually, your ability to say no will increase over time. That's why it's so crucial to do all the things you have been taught. Come to church, worship, Bible input, prayer, fellowship, go to cell group, serve. All those things have a purpose and they have an effect. They are exercises that will help you build up your spiritual muscles to pursue godliness and increase spiritual capacity. And then you will be able to say no in situations that you could not previously, not because now you try harder, but now you are stronger. Understand? So first, flee. Second, pursue. Third word is along. Along. What does that tell you? Do it together. Along with those who do it out of a pure heart. Because shame, a famous psychologist, Dr. Brené Brown, you may have heard of her. She says shame is the idea that you're not worthy of connection with somebody else. Shame is the idea that you're not worthy of connection with someone else. Shame makes you hide from other people. And that's the problem. It cuts you off from the help that you could use or the help that you need. Now, because all truth is God's truth, I'm going to I recommend to you a TED Talk. Okay? Don't go to it now, please. Okay? You can do that after the service. But I recommend you a TED Talk, okay, by this guy called Ellie Nash. Okay, just Google TED Talk, Ellie Nash. When his colleagues asked him once, in an office discussion, what is your goal? What's your long-term goal? He shocked them. Because instead of saying that I want to make so much money, I want to be a manager by this time, whatever, he said, my long-term goal, my goal for the next 10 years is to totally avoid porn. And they were stunned by his reply. And he explains that for the longest time in his life, he had been addicted to porn. And he just could not break free in spite of his best efforts. And it got so bad. One time, he had a corneal infection. And he see the doctor every day. And the doctor tells him, this is touch and go. You may go blind, if this thing doesn't recover. And guess what? Not surprisingly, he concluded that he was going to go blind because God is punishing him. He's a Jew. God is punishing him for watching so much porn. So, he did what any of us would do in that situation. He prayed desperately. And he bargained with God. He said, God, please, I'm very sorry. If you only heal me, give me back my eyesight. I promise never to watch porn again. And he was so relieved when the doctor treated him and said, you're not going to go blind, he's recovering well. And he was so happy. And he kept away from porn for all of 3 days. And then he went back to it with a vengeance. His breakthrough finally came only when he met a stranger who shared from his own struggles with porn. And that gave Ellie the courage to talk about his own situation for the first time. And he said that was the first time he felt the shame lifting from him. And then that man reported him to a porn support group. And many of them, when he went there, he was surprised. Many of them were very accomplished people. But they were all battling with the same addiction. But through his interactions with them, he found the strength to break free and to keep clean. And I love what he said at the conclusion of the TED Talk. He said this. Oh, okay, I didn't put it up, I think. Okay, let me read to you. He said, my name is Ellie Nash. I'm a porn addict. And I want to thank you because there's no better way I have found than this, sharing my story in front of an accepting room, an accepting audience, to hit, or at least to give me the best chance of achieving my number one goal, to never watch porn again. Guys and ladies as well, here in Brighton Community Church, you don't have to go out there and look for that special group, and that special support group. You already have many people who love you, who accept you, who want the best of you for you, and who are committed to hold you accountable and to pray along with you and to fight this battle with you. And listen, this is not a battle you can win on your own by sheer willpower and determination, but it can be done. You need to, number one, flee from lust. Number 2, you need to pursue godliness. Number 3, you need to enlist help. So, this Friday, don't avoid cell meeting because we are talking about this issue. All the more, make it a point to be there. And I've said over the last 2 weeks, guys, because still many people report to me, wow, go to CG, talk about sex. Very awkward. Why? This is God's beautiful gift to us. It's something we can talk about, okay? Not in a way that's demeaning or degrading or just joke about it. It's something we should talk about. And those questions don't even ask you direct questions. No, there's no question that asks you, are you sleeping around? Okay, you're not required to answer questions like that, right? They ask you about your view of sex. So this Friday, guys and ladies, if you make it a point to be there, you probably upon the first step in healing comes when you openly admit your struggles and help each other to win this battle. Together, we can experience victory. Can you say amen to that? Let's flee the evil desires of youth, pursue righteousness, faith, love, and hope, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart.